Hello to all my story lovers. Welcome back in Storytime channel. I'm Pallavi reading interesting stories for you. You know that I'm reading The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory written by the Roald Dahl. Up till now we reached to the chapter number 23, Square Squeaks That Look Round. Everybody stopped and crowded to the door. The top half of the door was made of glass. Grandpa Joe lifted Charlie up so that he could get a better view, and looking in, Charlie saw a long table, and on the table there were rows and rows of small white square shaped sweets. The sweets look very much like square sugar lumps, except that each of them had a funny little pink face painted on one side. At the end of the table, a number of Oompa Loompas were busily painting more faces on more sweets. There you are, cried Mr. Wonka. Square sweets that look round. They don't look round to me, said my thief. They look square, said Veruca Salt. They look completely square. But they are square, said Mr. Wonka. I never said they weren't. You said they were round, said Veruca Salt. I never said anything of the sort, said Mr. Wonka. I said they look round. But they don't look round, said Veruca Salt. They look square. They look round, insisted Mr. Wonka. They most certainly do not look round, cried Veruca Salt. Veruca, darling, said Mr. Salt, pay no attention to Mr. Wonka. He is lying to you. My dear old fish, said Mr. Wonka, go and boil your head. How dare you speak to me like that? Shouted Mrs. Salt. Oh, do shut up, said Mr. Wonka. Now watch this. He took a key from his pocket and unlocked the door and flung it open. And suddenly, at the sound of the door opening, all the rows of little square squeaks looked quickly round to see who was coming in. The tiny faces actually turned towards the door and stared at Mr. Wonka. There you are, he cried triumphantly. They are looking round. There's no argument about it. They are square sweets that look round. By golly, he's right, said Grandpa Joe. Come on, said Mr. Wonka, starting off down the corridor again. On we go. We must not dawdle. Butterscotch and buttergin, it said on the next door they passed. Now that sounds a bit more interesting, said Mr. Salt, Veruca's father. Glorious stuff, said Mr. Wonka. The Oompa Loompas all adore it. It makes them tidily. Listen, you can hear them in there now, whooping it up. Shrieks of laughter and snatches of singing could be heard coming through the closed door. They are drunk as lords, said Mr. Wonka. They are drinking butterscotch and soda. They like that best of all. Buttergin and tonic is also very popular. Follow me, please. We really must not keep stopping like this. He turned left. He turned right, then came to a long flight of stairs. Mr. Wonka slid down the banisters. The three children did the same. Mrs. Salt and Mrs. Stevie, the only woman now left in the party, were getting very out of the breath. Mrs. Salt was a great fat creature with short legs, and she was blowing like a rhinoceros. This way, cried Mr. Wonka, turning left at the bottom of the stairs. Go slower, panted Mrs. Salt. Impossible, said Mr. Wonka. We should never get there in time if I did. Get where? Asked Veruca Salt. Never you mind, said Mr. Wonka. You just wait and see. Now, chapter number 24, Veruca in the nut room. Mr. Wonka rushed down the corridor. The nut room, it said on the next door they came to. All right, said Mr. Wonka. Stop here for a moment and catch your breath and take a peek through the glass panel of this door. But don't go in. Whatever you do, don't go into the nut room. If you go in, you will disturb the squirrels. Everyone crowded around the door. Oh, look, Grandpa, look, cried Charlie. Squirrels, shouted Veruca Salt. Creaky, said Mike Thief. It was an amazing sight. 100 squirrels were seated upon high stools around a large table. On the table there were mounds and mounds of walnuts, and the squirrels were all working away like mad, shelling the walnuts at a tremendous speed. These squirrels are specially trained for getting the nuts out of the walnuts. Mr. Wonka explained. Why use squirrels? Mike Thief asked. Why not use Oompa Loompas? Because, said Mr. Wonka, Oompa Loompas can't get walnuts out of the walnut shell in one piece. They always break them in two. Nobody except squirrels can get walnuts whole out of the walnut shell every time. It is extremely difficult, but in my factory I insist upon only whole walnuts. Therefore, I have to have squirrels to do the job. Aren't they wonderful? The way they get those nuts out, and see how they first tap each walnut with their knuckles to be sure it's not a bad one. If it's bad, it makes a hollow sound, and they don't bother to open it. They just throw it down the rubbish chute. There, look, watch that squirrel nearest to us. I think he's got a bad one now. They watched the little squirrel as he tapped the walnut shell with his knuckles. He cocked his head to one side, listening intently. Then suddenly he threw the nut over his shoulder into a large hole in the floor. Hey, mommy! Shouted Veruca Salt suddenly. I have decided I want a squirrel. Get me one of those squirrels. Don't be silly, sweetheart, said Mrs. Salt. These all belong to Mr. Wonka. I don't care about that, shouted Veruca. I want one. All I have got at home is 2 dogs and 4 cats and 6 bunny rabbits and 2 parakeets and 3 canaries and a green parrot and turtle, a bowl of goldfish and a cage of white mice and a silly old hamster. I want a squirrel. All right, my pet, Mrs. Salt said soothingly. Mummy will get you a squirrel just as soon as she possibly can. But I don't want any old squirrel, Veruca shouted. I want a trained squirrel. At this point, Mrs. Salt and Mr. Salt, Veruca's father, stepped forward. Very well, Wonka, he said importantly. taking out a wallet full of money. How much would you want for these squirrels? Name your price. They are not for sale, Mr. Wonka answered. She can't have one. Who says I can't? Shouted Veruca. I am going in to get myself one this very minute. Don't, said Mr. Wonka quickly. But he was too late. The girl had already thrown open the door and rushed in. The moment she entered the room, 100 squirrels stopped what they were doing and turned their heads and stared at her with a small black beady eyes. Veruca Salt stopped also and stared back at them. Then her gaze fell upon a pretty little squirrel sitting nearest to her at the end of the table. The squirrel was holding a walnut in its paws. All right, Veruca said, I will have you. She reached out her hands to grab the squirrel, but as she did so, in that first split second, when her hands started to go forward, there was a sudden flash of movements in the room. Like a flash of brown lightning, every single square around the table took a flying leap towards her and landed on her body. 25 of them caught hold of her right arm and pinned it down. 25 more caught hold of her left arm and pinned that down. 25 caught hold of her right leg and anchored it to the ground. 24 caught hold of her left leg, and the one remaining squirrel, obviously the leader of them all, climbed up on to her shoulder and started tapping the rich girl's head with its knuckles. Save her! Screamed Mrs. Salt. Veruca, come back! What are they doing to her? They're testing her to see if she is a bad nut, said Mr. Wonka. You what? Veruca struggled furiously, but the squirrels held her tight and she couldn't move. The squirrel on her shoulder went tapping on the side of her head with his knuckles. Then, all at once, the squirrels pulled Veruca to the ground and started crying, carrying her across the floor. My goodness, she is a bad nut after all, said Mr. Wonka. Her head must have sounded quite hollow. Veruca kicked and screamed, but it was no use. The tiny strong paws held her tightly and she couldn't escape. Where are they taking her? Shrieked Mrs. Salt. She is going where all the other bad nuts go, said Mr. Willy Wonka, down the rubbish chute. By golly, she is going down the chute, said Mr. Salt, staring through the glass door at his daughter. Then save her, cried Mrs. Salt. Too late, said Mr. Wonka. She has gone. And indeed she had. But where? Shrieked Mrs. Salt, flapping her arms. What happens to the bad nuts? Where does the chute go to? That particular chute, Mr. Wonka told her, runs directly into the great big main rubbish pipe which carries away all the rubbish from every part of the factory, all the floor sweepings and potato peelings and rotten cabbage, fish hairs and stuff like that. Who eats fish and cabbage and potatoes in this factory? I would like to know, said Mike Thief. I do, of course, answered Mr. Wonka. You don't think I live on a cocoa beans, do you? But, shrieked Mrs. Salt, where does the great big pipe go to in the end? Why, to the furnace, of course, Mr. Wonka said calmly. To the incinerator. Mrs. Salt opened her huge red mouth and started to scream. Don't worry, said Wonka. There's always a chance that they have decided not to light it today. A chance? Yelled Mrs. Salt. My darling Veruca, she will be sizzled like a sausages. Quite right, my dear, said Mr. Salt. Now see here, Wonka, he added, I think you have gone just a shade too far this time. I do indeed. My daughter may be a bit of rump. I don't mind admitting it, but that doesn't mean you can roast her to a crisp. I'll have you know I am extremely cross about this. I really am. Oh, don't be cross, my dear sir, said Mr. Wonka. I expect she will turn up again sooner or later. She may not even have gone down at all. She may be stuck in the church just below the entrance hole, and if that's the case, all you will have to do is go in and pull her up again. Hearing this, both Mr. and Mrs. Salt dashed into the nut room and ran over to the hole in the floor and peered in. Veruca! Shouted Mrs. Salt. Are you down there? There was no answer. Mrs. Salt bent further forward to get a closer look. She was now kneeling right on the edge of her hole with her head down and her enormous behind sticking up in the air like a giant mushroom. It was a dangerous position to be in. She needed only one tiny little push, one gentle nudge in the right place, and that's exactly what the squirrels gave her. Over she toppled into the hole head first and screeching like a parrot. Good gracious me, said Mr. Salt as he watched his fat wife go tumbling down the hole. What a lot of rubbish there's going to be today. He saw her disappearing into the darkness. What's it like down there, Angina? He called out. He leaned further forward. The squirrels rushed up behind him. Help! He shouted. But he was already toppling forward, and down the church he went, just as his wife had done before him, and his daughter. Oh dear! Cried Charlie, who was watching with the others through the door. What on earth's going to happen to them now? I expect someone will catch them at the bottom of the chute, said Mr. Wonka. But what about the great fiery incinerator? Asked Charlie. They only light it every other day, said Mr. Wonka. Perhaps this is one of the days when they let it go out. You never know. They might be lucky. Now, the next chapter, number 25, The Great Glass Lift. I have never seen anything like it, cried Mr. Wonka. The children are disappearing like rabbits, but you must not worry about it. They will all come out in the wash. Mr. Wonka looked at the little group that stood beside him in the corridor. There were only two children left now, Mike Thief and Charlie Bucket, and there were three grown-ups, Mr. and Mrs. Thief and Grandpa Joe. Shall we move on? Mr. Wonka asked. Oh, yes, cried Charlie and Grandpa Joe, both together. My feet are getting tired, said Mike Thief. I want to watch television. If you are tired, then we would better take the lift, said Mr. Wonka. It's over here. Come on, in we go. He skipped across the passage to a pair of double doors. The doors slid open. The two children and the grown-ups went in. Now then, cried Mr. Wonka, which button shall we press first? Take, you, pick. Charlie Bucket stared around him in astonishment. This was the craziest lift he had ever seen. There were buttons everywhere. The walls and the even ceilings were covered all over with rows and the rows and rows of small black push buttons. There must have been a thousands of them on each wall and another thousands on the ceiling. And now Charlie noticed that every single button had a tiny printed label beside it telling you which room you would be taken to if you press it. This isn't just an ordinary up and down lift, announced Mr. Wonka proudly. This lift can go sideways and long ways and slant ways and any other way you can think of. It can visit any single room in the whole factory, no matter where it is. You simply press the button and zing, you were off. Fantastic! Murmured Grandpa Joe. His eyes were shining with excitement as he stared at the rows of buttons. The whole lift is made up of thick, clear glass, Mr. Wonka declared. Walls, doors, ceiling, floor, everything is made up of glass so that you can see out. But there's nothing to see, said Mike Thief. Choose a button, said Mr. Wonka. The two children may press one button each, so take your pick. Hurry up. In every room, something delicious and wonderful is being made. Quickly, Charlie started reading some of the labels alongside the buttons. The rock candy mine, 10,000 feet deep, it said on one. Coconut ice cream skating rings, it said on another. Then strawberry juice water pistol, toffee apple trees for planting out in your garden, all sizes. Exploding sweets for your enemies. Luminous lollies for eating in bed at night. Mint jujube for the boy next door. They will give him green teeth for a month. Cavity filling caramels. No more dentist. Stick jaw for talkative parents. Regal sweets that wriggle delightfully in your tummy after swallowing. Invisible chocolate bars for eating in the class. Sugar coated pencils for sucking. Fizzy lemonade swimming pools. Magic hand fudge when you hold it in your hand. You taste it in your mouth. Rainbow drops. Suck them and you can spit in 6 different colors. Come on, cried Mr. Wonka. We can't wait all day. Isn't there a television room in all this lot? Asked Mike Thief. Certainly there's a television room, Mr. Wonka said, but button over there. He pointed with his finger. Everybody look, television chocolate. It said on the tiny label beside the button. Whoop! Shouted Mike Thief. That's for me. He stuck out his thumb and pressed the button. Instantly there was a tremendous whizzing sound. The doors changed shut and the lift leaped away as though it had been stung by a wasp. But it leaped sideways, and all the passengers except Mr. Wonka, who was holding on the strap from the ceiling, were flung off, their feet on the floor. Get up! Cried Mr. Wonka, roaring with laughter. But just as they were staggering to their feet, the lift changed direction and swerved violently round a corner, and over they went once more. Help! Shouted Mrs. Thief. Take my hand, madam, said Mr. Wonka gallantly. There you are. Now grab this strap. Everybody grab a strap. The journey's not over yet. Old Grandpa Joe staggered to his feet and caught hold of a strap. Little Charlie, who couldn't possibly reach as high as that, put his arms around Grandpa Joe's legs and hung on tight. The lift rushed on at the speed of rocket. Now it was beginning to climb. It was shooting up and up and up on a steep, slanting course, as if it were climbing a very steep hill. Then, suddenly, as though it had come to the top of the hill and gone over precipice, it dropped like a stone, and Charlie felt his tummy coming right up into his throat. And Grandpa Joe shouted, "Yippee! Here we go!" And Mrs. Thief cried out, "The rope has broken. We are going to crash." And Mr. Wonka said, "Calm yourself, my dear lady," and patted her comfortingly on the arm. And then Grandpa Joe looked down at Charlie, who was clinging to his leg, and he said, "Are you all right, Charlie?" Charlie shouted, "I love it. It's like being on a roller coaster." And through the glass walls of the lift, as it rushed along, they caught sudden glimpses of strange and wonderful things going on in some of the other rooms. An enormous spout with brown sticky stuff oozing out of it on the floor. A great craggy mountain made entirely of fudge, with Oompa Loompas hacking huge hunks of fudge out of his sides, a machine with white powder spraying out of it like a snowstorm, a lake of hot caramel with steam coming off it, a village of Oompa Loompas with tiny houses and streets and hundreds of Oompa Loompa children no more than 4 inches high playing in the streets. And now the lift began flattening out again. But it seemed to be going faster than ever, and Charlie could hear the scream of the wind outside as it hurtled forward, and it twisted, and it turned, and it went up, and it went down, and "I'm going to be sick!" yelled Mrs. Steve, turning green in the face. "Please don't be sick," said Mr. Wonka. "Try and stop me," said Mrs. Steve. "Then you would better take this," said Mr. Wonka, and he swept his magnificent black top hat off his head and held it out upside down in front of Mrs. Thief's mouth. "Make this awful thing stop," ordered Mr. Thief. "Can't do that," said Mr. Wonka. "I won't stop till we get there. I only hope no one's using the other lift at this moment." "What other lift?" screamed Mrs. Thief. "The one that goes the opposite way on the same track as this one," said Mr. Wonka. "Holy mackerel!" cried Mr. Thief. "You mean we might have a collision?" "I have always been lucky so far," said Mr. Wonka. "Now I am going to be sick," yelled Mrs. Thief. "No, no," said Mr. Wonka. "Not now. We are nearly there. Don't spoil my hat." The next moment there was a screaming of brakes, and the lift began to slow down. Then it stopped altogether. "Some right," said Mr. Thief, wiping his great sweetie face with a handkerchief. "Never again," gasped Mrs. Thief. And then the doors of the lift slid open, and Mr. Wonka said, "Just a minute now. Listen to me. I want everybody to be careful in this room. There is a dangerous stuff around in here, and you must not tamper with it. Now, We will conclude the next chapter in the next video. Till then, bye bye. Thanks for watching, guys.